Hi, my lovelies. Woo here. Yesterday we talked a little bit about fascia. I wanted to continue that discussion. I'll give you a little recap, maybe a little bit of new information I didn't say yesterday. But fascia is the stuff that covers your entire body. It is your biggest organ. And so, like, even from an individual muscle cell, it's encased in fascia, and then a group of muscle cells is encased in fascia, and it keeps building until you have the whole muscle. And then the fascia is actually the tendons on either side that kind of hold in each muscle cell. So even though its responsibility is to contract and just squeeze and to do that, to shift the fascia, what's actually moving is all of your fascia. And why that's important is because everything is encased from your bones, your organs, muscles. You got whole big pieces of fascia that kind of run throughout your entire body, and it all talks to each other. And so it's particularly important when we're talking about movement. So if you find yourself having trouble moving in a particular way, you might notice that while you might have some pain in your shoulder, but really, like, you don't have that quite that full movement in the hips, things like that. I think I mentioned briefly yesterday an example from rugby. Basically, constantly telling all my athletes, like, you need to have like trunk rotation so that they can pass the ball back, because if you don't have the trunk rotation, that movement has got to give somewhere, and it's generally going to be in that planted foot ACL. So as you're trying to move your body and you don't quite have the rotation here, that planted foot just kind of gets extra torque on it, and can compromise the ACL. Also compromise other structures in your knee and throughout your body. But the important piece here is that you're taking stretching at a global level versus just thinking of it as, oh, I need to stretch my quads, so I need to do this stretch. It's much more than that, because we're very mobile, and how that tension gets put into our body also needs to kind of come out in not necessarily like the same way, but maybe a similar fashion, or a way that your body can like finally relax and like, oh, you've released this tension, now I can release this tension. And you can kind of notice how like it shifts your whole body. I've noticed at the beginning and the end of doing stuff like this, so if I'm doing this for, let's say, 20 minutes to a half hour, I generally notice a change in my body. Kind of wish when I was doing this a while ago I was taking before and after pictures, but because things aren't as noticeable as they were in the beginning. Like, my rib would be kind of one side of my rib cage was kind of popped out a little bit, and by the end I looked a lot more symmetrical. So it just depends on kind of what you're working on, and getting your body to, you listening to your body so that you can relieve the tension, so that you can maybe look a little bit more symmetrical or be a little bit more symmetrical. But remember that we are asymmetric. So the things that you do on one side, you're not going to necessarily do on the other side. Also, kind of something else to think about is how sticky your fascia is. When you pull it apart underneath a microscope, it actually looks like cotton candy. So it's very sticky, and it doesn't really like to, like, it's like Velcro, and it doesn't really like to unstick. So not saying that you need more pressure, you just need to find the right way to unhook it, versus like just trying to rip it apart. That being said, today I think what I'm going to work on is my low back. So kind of like, here's my PSISs, and I'm going just up a little bit into my So right here is my iliac crest, and I'm just going into the vertebrae that's right there. So that's where I'm putting my hands, is kind of those low back vertebrae. Just to the side, kind of feeling into those muscles and seeing if there's anywhere so like right now I feel like this is probably a good place to start. It's not really like tender, it's just I'm kind of noticing that there's something a little bit there. It's a little bit more active, spasmed, if you will, and so I'm just going to see what my body wants to do. Squeezing it a little bit more seems to help a little bit, and then and allowing, so if I also, we can explore stretching it a little bit. Body doesn't seem to really want to stretch so much, it more wants to contract right there. So now I'm just going to kind of keep moving my hip around until I feel like I've got the right stretch that it wants, and I feel like right here is very engaged, and like it feels like it's really tight and it wants to release. So I'm just gonna kind of give it a second here to see if it'll do it. And so it feels a little bit looser, but not quite fully relaxed. It feels a little bit more even on both sides now. But I still kind of want to work a little bit more on that hip. I'm gonna actually work a little bit lower, probably a little bit closer to my PSIS down here, but not quite, like still above it a little bit, and then off to the side of my vertebrae. So I'm kind of more on the iliac crest. And this is just basically by me putting my hand here, and I'm not really like doing trigger points. I'm not really putting a whole lot of pressure into it. I'm just letting my body know that like this is what I want to work on, and kind of seeing what my body wants to do to release it. So I'm noticing that, yeah, so that's kind of releasing all of that as I move. And another thing I might do is kind of work on a global hip level kind of scene. So I might go back and forth on my hips a little bit until I decide like, oh, this way is a little bit more restricted. Maybe we'll kind of explore what that is. And I'm noticing like a stretch on the inside of this leg, and the stretch back here on this hip. And just kind of feeling that a little bit. Is it maybe I'm having this stretch because I have, this is too tight, or is it maybe the opposite? Or, you know, is it just structurally that's the way it's supposed to be? And kind of like how I'm putting the tension. It's kind of a little bit of physics in there too, how one angle and the pressure on it changes the things. So there's definitely different ways to think about it. So now I'm putting a little bit more pressure into my right heel, and I'm feeling a little bit more of a stretch on that outer hamstring. I'm also feeling some stretching right here in my low back as I do this. So that seems like it's kind of connected. If I kind of slowly move this way and shift my body, noticing I'm feeling again where I had my hand earlier. Now I'm feeling a little bit more stretch here. So I'm just going to kind of keep my hand here to feel in that. I just felt like a little pop release in my knee here, which is actually feeling pretty good. A little unexpected because I wasn't really focused on it, but felt good. And then now when I feel my hips again, they feel a little bit more even. Still feeling a little bit more in this spot, feels a little bit tighter. So kind of again, seeing where my body wants to go to release it, and it feels like it's something more over here. So I'm gonna kind of keep working with that. And yeah, and then just kind of keep feeling where my body wants to go. And I'm noticing that the tension here, it feels more like a stretch, whereas earlier it didn't really like to be stretched. Um, and now it feels like much more mobile. That spot doesn't really seem to jump out as much. I'm just kind of feeling through my iliac crest at the moment, and it's feeling pretty even. This hip is still a little bit tighter on this side than the other side, so I'm going to kind of keep feeling where this wants to release. I'm actually feeling the fascia kind of move up through the attachments here on my ribs, and I'm noticing that this bottom rib right here is actually a little bit tender. So I'm going to put my hand there and see if maybe that's something that, because it doesn't hurt to breathe, it doesn't hurt to move, like nothing seems to be, like it's not like pain. I'm just noticing as I touch it that it seems to be a little bit tender. And so instead of just kind of, digging into it like I would with massage therapy, or I'm going to try to feel like what happens if I give it a little pressure as I move around and see if that changes. Like, and I did notice a little bit of shift. It is a little less tender. Again, I'm just going to put my hand there. I'm not putting any pressure at all, and just seeing where I'm noticing how this activates right here as I bend this way and kind of activate those muscles a little bit. And then kind of come around, see, just kind of exploring, see where my body wants to go, see if this changes it, adding in this. I feel like that changed something. It feels smoother, like it was feeling like there was a little bit of a spasm or something in my intercostals here, those muscles between the ribs. But I'm noticing as I just kind of put more pressure into this area and kind of engage my core a little bit, and now I'm kind of moving around it. That seems to, like, doesn't seem to be tender. Well, just maybe a little bit tender, but like, yeah, it feels smoother, feels more even with the other side. Again, all these muscles are pretty connected to your low back. I know it doesn't seem like it because up here you're working on your ribs. How is that connected to my low back? But everything's connected, from your head down to your feet. So I think I'm going to leave it there today. Thank you all for joining me, and for a little education, a little movement, and see what your body is trying to tell you today. Also, if you want to check me out, see some more videos, check me out on Somato Enlightenment on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. I also have a website, somatoenlightenment.com. No videos on there yet. Those are coming soon. I just need to update my website a little bit. So, but I hope to see you again soon. I'll be doing more videos, and I'll see you then.